Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 3 of 12 Monkeys. I will go ahead and warn you, this will include spoilers from the entire season. So if you have not seen the entire season, do not listen to this because I will be spoiling everything. And don't expect me to go in any particular order. I'm just going to be talking about things as they come to me, and just kind of how these things usually roll. So, obviously at the beginning, I'll kind of run through like a little, just like, blanket statement. I'm like, this is what I felt about the season without going into too many spoilers. Then I'll make a clear cut to be like, hey, I'm talking about spoilers. And then obviously, but nevertheless, first thing I'm going to talk about is how I felt about the season. Really enjoyed this season. It has obviously a lot of new things kind of got brought up this season. Obviously, diving more into what being a primary is all about. New technology to a certain extent, which I'm curious will that kind of pop up more in the future, even more in the future, because it plays such a heavy, extent in this season. Like I said, obviously once I get to spoilers, I'll dive deeper into it, but it's very interesting, especially when you look at Cole and Cassie's relationship. I was very interested to see where they would end up at the season, because obviously season 1, even though there's some problems here and there, because obviously dealing with who Cole is versus who Cassie is Cassie's the more kind-hearted person, while Cole was a little more jaded just because of his experiences. But obviously, when it was all said and done, he became kind-hearted. But then you get the vice versa of that in season 2, because they're divided, and then they finally get back together. It's like, oh wait, you're a different person. Wait, you're a different person. You're not willing to do whatever it takes. You came into my life, and this, that. But it's it takes season 3. They take that and they, where they ended up in season 2, that the feelings they felt, and it's they build upon that. So I thought that was pretty nice. I was just curious, because I don't think, they were not nearly as divided in this season like they were, 2. It was it's they took where they were at season 1 and just, obviously increased it to the nth degree or whatever. It's that's how I'm phrasing it, but it's they were, that's almost, what threw me off the most in season 2 was, man, Cassie and Cole are just, completely on different wavelengths now, to the point it's, obviously, like I said, Cassie and Cole kind of switch positions on where they're morally aligned at and everything. So, certain story elements I didn't see coming. Obviously, a lot of plot twists, especially the one that kind of pops up in the very last episode. Do note I am recording this right after I just binged it. The entire I've been doing the whole weekend thing. I haven't this isn't me sitting down watching all of it at once. It's I've been watching each of the episodes every day on Sci-Fi. So I literally just finished the season finale of it. So here I am recording it, but that twist that came up halfway through the episode really, I said, obviously I'll dig deeper into that later on, but that really got me, plus certain story elements, which, at this point, it's I'm tired of talking around the bush. So, first of all, if you were asking, okay, the season's very good, I highly recommend you check it out. Obviously, if you love season 1 and season 2, season 3 is just going to be awesome too. Obviously, there's story twists and turns, and this season kind of all the seasons kind of make you think, because you're with time travel and everything. It's where will things end up? What leads to something happening? It's at what point do we tie into something that's happened before that we, it's a whole thing. Nevertheless, right here is the point where I'm cutting it off. From here on out will be spoilers. So if you have not finished season 3 of 12 Monkeys, do not listen any further. So, you've been warned. So, where to start? So much to cover. One, I was bringing it up near the tail end of the kind of spoiler-free thing, was the division, the story element, that, I appreciated, the division of the group, Jones and the entire team versus Cassie and Cole. I didn't see that coming, and I wasn't expecting it, it ended up popping up pretty late in the season. There was only, 3 episodes left. Yeah, there was only 3 episodes left when that happened. So that was had to be episode 7 when that happened. I was wow. But because obviously Cole and Cassie kept it a secret and everything. I thought it was kind of crazy how Cole ended up finding out. He ends up learning it from Ramsey. Oh, he learned it from Ramsey because Ramsey learned it from Olivia, who was yeah, you should go back in time and kill Cassie to prevent this whole situation. Which Ramsey on top of it had to it was a line that stuck out to me too. It was a moment he told Cole, he's one life for 7 billion. And Cole's really? You out of anyone doesn't get to tell me that after everything you did trying to make the virus come true, make everything play out like that to save your son, to make sure that things happen so that he exists, and now you want to get on me about not letting you kill Cassie or possibly my future son? Is And to me, like, that was it, the hypocrisy behind it. But because it's that particular situation where it's like the story is different in the moment it's not your child, which is like, I'm not trying to fault Ramsey, because the fact of the matter is that's human nature. Like, anyone in his position would have felt and done the same thing. I mean, everyone did. I mean, Jones didn't feel like that, even considering her own like familial situation. It's like her and Hannah, like, you know, she lost Hannah when she was younger. Hannah came back as a different person, but still, like, you know, there was no sympathy there, because it's like, he's the witness. He causes all this calamity. He causes all this problem. He causes all this death. Everything is from him. But I mean, I think it was like, I wasn't expecting it to stay at like hidden as long as it did. And the only reason why it came out was because obviously Deacon started getting suspicious, and then Jones kind of investigated and found out for herself. Side note about Deacon, I felt so bad for him, especially like when the way his story played out. Especially because like Deacon for most of the season is like, what's my purpose? It's like literally looking at the witness's word. Everyone else is involved, but it's like, me, I have no spot on this, which means I think he plays a role he may not realize yet. I mean, because obviously I'll go ahead and spoil, like I said, I'm doing this in any order anyway. Athon is dead at that point, so maybe a lot of the stuff that's happened, I mean, but maybe there's certain things that Athon couldn't see beyond his death. Maybe beyond that, there's no, I don't know, like, because Deacon's kind of like I don't know how to really phrase it. Like, he's got to be a key part in this, and just like, it's like, what you do, like, why, but the thing is, it's like, he's got to play some part in it. I just can't properly phrase it like what I mean. But nevertheless, the whole situation with like, oh, because I was entering this season, I was kind of sad that Deacon's dead. Literally, the moment I started thinking that, oh, Deacon's alive, one of the dudes from Titan had healed him up, patched him up and everything, and Deacon's dealing with the whole situation with his dad. Which I love that whole conversation of like, you know, it's because like Deacon kind of became the way he was because in spite of his dad, he tried to be there for his brother. He's like, I did all the bad stuff. I did the killing. I did the stealing, all for the sake of, you know, to keep my brother not from having to do it. But ultimately his brother ended up dying because it's like, I mean, the way his dad was saying like, oh, because your brother was weak, because you coddled him. You can hate me all you want, but me doing what I did, beating you and just being an all around asshole was for it's basically because of me that you survived this long. He even told this story of like how like, Deacon lied about some dude making a pass at him or something like that. Some older guy kind of like, this is like when Deacon's like super young. And the reason why is because Deacon wanted to hit his dad to take all that anger and fury out on this one dude rather than him, his brother, and his mom. So, I mean, we still never really got to really learn too much about Deacon's past. Obviously this is a little peek into it, but maybe that's something we'll kind of see in the future too. I'd like to, I mean, it seems like going forward we'll be delving probably a lot more into a lot of the characters' backgrounds and stuff like that. So, I mean, because one certain element that's still yet to ever come up again was Jones' husband. He popped up in season 2, didn't he? I definitely know he popped up at the tail end of season 1. I want to say he popped up in season 2 as well, but nevertheless, because like, you know, the thing about him too, when it came to Deacon, is the fact is that I did kind of like that representation of like, oh, his dad looked exactly like him. He's like, yeah, the fact is I look so much like he's like, no, you don't. And then his dad's face changed, and so it's like, just kind of obviously like projecting a little bit and stuff like that, because I guess it was supposed to be. Because I think when Deacon looks at himself, he sees a lot of his dad. He sees all the bad things he does, you know? So, I mean, because that's a big question in this series, too. Is like, can you justify what you do? Is there is there forgiveness for what you've done? Like, Cole's always wanted forgiveness for all the stuff he's done in the past. Deacon's kind of gotten to the point, especially at least in this season, like, he wanted to be apologetic before, especially, like, he kind of apologized to Jennifer before about, oh yeah, how I killed older you and everything. That was kind of my fault and everything. But it's like, now he kind of closes the walls on his heart, because he's like, I guess to him, it's like, I was starting to get sentimental and weak. Let's not forget, he started getting close to Cassie, but Cassie was just like, no, that's as far as it goes. You taught me and everything. I could be remembering this wrong, but didn't they sleep together back in season 2? I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But even then, that's still a situation where it's like, because when you see them kind of get back and, you know, Cole and Cassie reunite, you see the look in his eye, because, you know, I think, you know, he's the one that rescued her, but still, like, she won't see him. She'll see Cole, but she won't see him. So, what else would really? And I mean, this is also a big, like, season for Jones too, and the fact is, the matter is, like, because Hannah's always heard the rumors about, like, obviously not knowing it was her mom at the time, but like all the rumors about Jones, about her being like this evil woman and all her terrible experiments. All obviously we know those being the experiments she used, like on, you know, splintering and stuff like that. And what we found out about back in season 1, what that looked like, the failures and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is what she was doing to Olivia this season, like using the machine to kind of cause her so much pain like that. And it's like, and Hannah's seeing that, because Hannah's like, you know, there's a different way. You don't have to be that way. You don't have to be kind of like this cruel monster to get whatever information you want. Like, we can win this war, but not by those means. Because it's a situation where, I mean, and that's kind of a common theme too, is like, too, is that like, do the sins of the parents transpire to the children? Because like, there's a moment where Hannah had her blade against one of the scientists' necks, and then she almost like kind of looked down and she was looking at Jones, and she kind of put her blade down, because I think when she was saying, I think in her mind she was seeing like, I'm up here condemning mom for doing this to Olivia, but here I am, got my knife to someone else's throat, threatening just to force her. It's like, you know, two wrongs don't make a right type of situation. Obviously with Cole, you know, finding out about his son being a witness, and the fact of the matter is like, the decision of should I kill him or should I not? Cole thought to himself, it's like, no, the fact of the matter is there's, you know, obviously there's no forgiveness for me. The fact of the matter is what, like, you know, God doesn't forgive, he forgets. You know, when this whole thing, like, at the end of the day, it's like, once again, one life for 7 billion. Which, side note, because I was thinking about that specific moment, let's not forget that the other two Impractical Jokers, Joe and Sal, popped up this season. Freaking love their part too. Because if you don't remember, like, Q and Murr popped up at different points last season, but obviously, like, it's weird that Joe and Sal are in this season together. I think I might have brought that up when I was talking about last season. I don't remember, but I was like, are there others going to pop up? Because the moment, like, I think it was like Q popped up first and then Murr popped up later. I don't know. Either way, I was like, it's so interesting. And now they're probably like, maybe some of the people behind this show are fans of that or something. I don't know. That's just kind of interesting. Man, I was excited. I was like, there you are. But nevertheless, maybe like in season 4, we'll get all 4 of them in like, you know, in the same season, or maybe all 4 of them like, no, I feel like they won't do that now, because obviously they're set in different time periods and stuff like that. One's in like, you know, Joe and, I mean, nevertheless, it's like they're definitely in different time periods, so that's probably never going to happen, but you never know. Kind of like a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of inside joke, I guess you could kind of put it. But the fact is that the point I was going to bring up is, you know, Cole having to make that decision. That's not an easy decision to make, you know. It's like I said, with Ramsey's situation, it's like you're killing a lot of people, but it's for your own son. It's like in this situation, it's the reverse. Kill your son to save a lot of people. And it's like, that's a burden that no one really should have to handle. I mean, granted, we had the whole situation with Cole meeting like his future self, who's wearing the suits that popped up this season, which, can I comment on just how awesome they are? That's so cool to basically, it's like, yep, especially when he was fighting Deacon on the train and everything, he was just like going back in time, sneaking up on him, and Deacon's just like, oh my, this sucks. And then there's 2 Coles at one point in time. It's just like, it's kind of cheating. I kind of have, like I said, there weren't that many that popped up this season. There were very few. The only ones that really had any were obviously the Witness and obviously like his 4 Guardians and stuff like that. They're the main ones that have it, but you know, there's a few. I'm guessing maybe next season there'll be a lot more sprinkled within or not. We'll just kind of have to see, because I'd love to see kind of battles go on like that. I mean, because obviously, like, I had a feeling the moment that first popped, I was like, is that Cole kicking Cole's ass? And he's like, yep. He's like, hey, asshole, it's me, future asshole. And it's just, I love him kind of talking down to his past self like that and everything. He's just like, God, how about you take a second to stop, think, and breathe? And it's just like, wow. Very different Coles. But obviously that's something we don't see until much later. Like, obviously that's, because I was thinking, like, okay, you know, by the time we like, obviously when the season was going on, I was like, okay, so by the time we get to the end of the season, we're going to go back to that. It's like, nope, that didn't happen. It's like, oh, so that's going to be far. Like, that might be like some season 4 finale. I mean, you know, granted, you know, go ahead and mention it. Like, next season will be the last season. So it might even be like some series finale stuff, or very close, like to the tail end of season 4 type of stuff. Cause that seemed like because even Cassie came out of shadows, was like, you know, oh, that was nice of you, kind of, he's like giving him hope and everything. It's like, I kind of don't have any choice. I have to give him hope, so that basically he goes to where he needs to be, where I am right now, so I can get to where I am right now. So it's like, here we go. Because to me, I thought this was all I thought that moment was all tailored to, like, hey, let's deal with this Witness situation currently. But I mean, to a certain extent, you know, it kind of is. But I mean, that was another element too, like destiny and stuff like that. Like the way they put it, loops, because especially because points where like, you know, Cole kind of gets his head, like, is there any way to escape loops? Does everything of like is everything kind of planned out? Is there no way of changing things? Is fate and destiny set in stone? Is there no way to fight and beat time? Great examples of that. I mean, it never came up, but I mean, obviously when Cole had to kill Ramsey, which is like, did not see that coming. I was like, I mean, Cole had the opportunity to kill Ramsey before, but he saved him. But then again, you're like, well, does this technically mean that this is time, like, completing itself? Because Ramsey was supposed to die, but what if, like, I mean, it begs the question, like, did things really change? Like, was Ramsey always meant to die? Maybe it's at a different point in time and stuff. That was back in, what, 2007 he ended up dying, when he was supposed to die in, like, what was that, 2015, I think? Nevertheless, you know, it's like, it begs questions like that. Like, was that always meant to be? Just like the whole, you know, Athon, I've always like kept butchering his name. I do apologize. Like, I gotta find out who that actor is. He looks so familiar to me, but I just couldn't quite place who he was. But it's like, you know, am I always meant to grow up and become the witness, kill all these people? Because a thing that popped up this season is, and I feel like so stupid for not realizing, because I'm pretty sure I never brought it up last season. It never crossed my mind to think that he himself is a primary. Maybe that did come up last season, but it's like, because there were certain people that are like, oh wait, he's a primary. It's like, but like, it just never crossed my mind. Like I said, I honestly don't remember half the stuff I said last season, just because I recorded that like a year ago. So of course it's not going to be set in my head like that. But nevertheless, it's like, I don't actually remember like that ever really coming up. Maybe it did, but still, it's like, in retrospect, if it never came out or ever crossed my mind last season, it should have, because it's like, that's how he knows all the things that he knows and stuff like that, because he's a primary. He's able to see kind of, well, everything play out. It's like, that's how he's able to map out the word of the witness, which kind of showed you just kind of how special he is, because it's like, excuse me, even Jennifer has trouble like focusing. It's kind of all just kind of jumbled gibberish for her, but for him it was a little more concrete. He was able to map everything out like that. Granted, it was one of his guardians, like his name was Sebastian, that kind of led to him being like that. Because it seems like, I mean, granted, we really never got to know his other guardians. The only other guardian we got to really know what's her name? Magdalena, the kind of douchebag. Because for her, she was all about, like, you know, it's just like, oh, I believe so heavily in the witness, and I want you to be who you're meant to be. It's like, you know, because Sebastian is like, oh, you raised a boy, you teach him stuff about history, art, and literature. I'm the one that's going to be like the mother in his life and everything, which is like, you're not his mom. But it's like, oh, I take pride in being the witness. I was raised up to eventually raise the witness to become who he is. That's kind of like her mind and her purpose. But Sebastian didn't want the witness to be like that. The fact of the matter is, there were pictures that Ethan drew of Cole with his gun pointing in his face, Ethan's face, but Sebastian would hide them away. But the more Magdalena found out about it, she was like super pissed and everything. It's like, because he's like, I don't want this to influence him. It's like, it's basically something that Ethan, let's see what I mean. I keep doing that. Wanted to decide for himself. It's like what kind of future he wanted, because he saw who he was going to be in the future. And it's like, it sucks knowing that everything, because it's not just the future that is meant for him, it's the future all these different people want from him. He wanted to decide his own future. There's even a point that Sebastian's like, oh, I see you as being this good man that you are. So he tried to get Ethan, I'm sorry. It's like, it's such an odd name to me, because every time I was like, is it Ethan, everything he did, I apologize. I mean, like, it's like, you're a good man now, so Sebastian's like, okay, I take you to Titan now, and you can grow up and become who you were meant, a good witness. But obviously, Ethan didn't like that, because I think in his mind it was like, I want to decide my own future, no matter, even if it's for the betterment of people. I don't want you choosing my future for me. I have to make that choice myself. So, I mean, it's got to be rough, like I said, because we pushed it even more in this season of like what it means to be a primary. Not just the fact is that the voices will drive you crazy, but the fact that it matters, and the way he puts it too, it's like he's living all these different points in time in life and everything, and he's going, everyone he meets, he automatically knows when they die and how they die and everything. It's like, to him, it's like, I'm living every day surrounded by ghosts. There's even one point, he's like, yeah, I normally would be driven insane by this, but luckily for me, I can travel through time. He activates the device and it's like, he's like, well, that's unfortunate. Just so calm, cool, and collected about that, which is kind of interesting about him. He wasn't like he was an angry person to a certain extent, angry at the fate that was kind of bestowed upon him, angry at the fact of the matter is, can you really defeat time or something like that? I mean, it was kind of interesting, the fact is that he actually went back in time and met, obviously as an older guy, he went back in time and he met Cole and Cassie at different points in their time. Like, obviously, like, they didn't know who he was at the time, but it's like, for Cassie, he visited Cassie at a point in time, like, after she had lost her very first patient, and it's like, she was at a point in time, I guess he went to them at points in time, he knew that he would get a very straightforward answer, because it's like, I guess if he felt like if you visit them any other time, like, obviously things would kind of get complicated, but I guess he had to go to a point in time where it wouldn't create any problems for his future, their future, like, there won't be any, like, causality, problems. At least that's my understanding of it. Like, he went to Cole like around the time Cole was out on his own surviving. There was no Ramsey, so I assumed maybe that was one point Ramsey just kind of off on his own or something like that, but Cole's struggle with wanting to be better, kind of wanting forgiveness for all he's did in the past, because something that ended up crossing his mind and I thought was kind of interesting was the fact that he was like, the witness didn't end up the way he did because of nature. Like, that's what Cassie is like, nurture is what I meant. Because Cassie's like, no, it's because of all these 12 monkey followers and everything like that. They're the ones that made him like that. But it's like, no, he did it on his own because, like, I did a lot of bad things. So it's like, what if whatever's wrong with me that's broken inside of me, what if I pass that on to my son? You know, and I guess that's even more so why, you know, Cole felt like it was his responsibility to deal with him, because it's like, I created this monster, I have to be the one to end it. So, and then with Cassie, it's all about, like, you know, Cassie said, like, in her mind, she was like, she was talking to her, and she said, basically, there's a point where you just want everything to stop. People who are bleeding or choking on their own blood, or just, you know, like, because there was a point, like, where an accident happened, there was a whole bunch of people that were in there, everyone's hurt, and it's just like, there's so many people hurt at the same time, it's too much, it's a little overwhelming, you don't have the time, and they don't have the time, because it's like, you don't have the time to really take the time to help every person, because the fact of the matter is, it's like, by the time you get to someone else, like, who's to say that person's condition hasn't already worsened, but you are already dealing with someone else trying to help them out, there's just not enough time, and when time is your enemy, it's in a way, the way Cassie put it was kind of a thief, which she kind of regretted that later on, because they were reading a journal, which she felt bad, because she's like, the fact is he came to me in a time he needed me, and obviously you didn't know who he was then, and like I said, I felt like he went to those specific points in time because he felt like he could get their they talk straight from the heart in those particular situations, that armed with the knowledge that they know now, that he feels like it probably would have influenced their opinions about certain things, so he wanted to go to them at points where he's like, this is their raw emotions, this is who they are, this is them speaking to me, not like some other things coming into play and affecting those situation. I mean, because really, it's quite sad when you actually think about what pushed him to finally decide, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go with this Red Forest plan. I mean, it turns out all of this was about him meeting a woman, Eliza, a very strong, very interesting woman who kind of didn't put up with his bullshit. It's like, yo, like, I'm not going to be so easily swayed by your quote-unquote charm, your money and stuff like that. You know, like, you're most likely just after me for my body and stuff like that. But it's just like they spent time together, they fell in love, but he lost her. He went back in time, tried to save her, even explaining to her everything that happened. I mean, it makes you wonder, did he explain it to her any other time? But he tried to explain it, he explained it to her, but she's like, the fact of the matter is you can't do this. The fact of the matter is, like, all we have. And it's like, cause we ended up finding out that there's a watch that Cassie ended up finding at the beginning of the season when she went to the witness's room. There's a watch. This pocket watch belonged to Eliza, who gave it to him. It's from her dad, but it stops. It doesn't go forward, it doesn't go back. Basically, it's like, this is a representation of, you only have today. Don't be so focused on the past, because you can't go back and do anything with it. I mean, obviously time travel and everything, but you shouldn't. It's just, this is the nature of things. Even at one point, like during a casual conversation, because he kind of makes it like, oh, what if we could do bend time and stuff like that? And she's like, oh, the fact of the matter is that would make you a god, but powers that no man's supposed to have. And that's true. But he promised her that he wouldn't go back in time and try and save her anymore. Well, she couldn't do that because she died. Again, even when he went back in time to save her, she died. And he did over and over again. 607 times he had to watch the woman he loved die. No matter what he did, she would always die. Which then puts in perspective, like, wait a minute, what does this mean? Like, does that mean there is only destiny, that there is no changing anything, that the cycles and the loops will always be the way they are? Once again, it's like, it does seem like obviously throughout the seasons you see that there are things that change. Nosebleeds pop up, you know, once again the best example is on Ramsey's situation, but then it's like, is that a technicality? Is that going to be something later on that's like, yeah, we're actually making it so that, you know, well, the records always said that he died that day, but who's to say, like, maybe things did change, which is kind of like what they're pushing at anyway, is that the fact is Cole did change that. So it's like, but what does that mean now that Ramsey is gone? I mean, and I also appreciate the fact is that, you know, Cole brought that up too, like when he killed Ramsey, he was like, yeah, the fact of the matter is where I am now, my conscience is gone, because Ramsey, no matter what, like Ramsey was always the one to be like, yo, brother, we don't have to do this. Let's kind of take a step back. We don't have to be as vicious as we are. Like Cole was the more ruthless one. I mean, that's why him and Deacon kind of clicked so well together. We've obviously learned that in the past. So, not excusing what the witness is doing, but the fact of the matter is you understand exactly where he's coming from. Like, after everything that's happened, it's like the sadness, the loneliness, the anger. Because for him, it's also combined with the fact of the matter is a identity crisis situation. Because you have all this, like I said, all these different people telling you who you should be. You have the future telling you who you should be. And it's like, you don't know who that is. You don't know who you are. Your identity kind of slips away when you have yourself being pulled in so many different directions. And so it's just kind of interesting seeing the complexity that is behind the witness. I mean, granted, we find out later on, it's like, oh, actually, he's not the witness. I did, like, once again, like, I brought it up during, like, the spoiler-free aspect, but that was a twist I wasn't expecting. I knew Olivia had to be up to something. Like, the fact of the matter is, Jennifer kept warning everyone, do not trust Olivia. And I was like, I don't trust her. Like, obviously, she played everybody for a fool, her and Ramsey, like Ramsey turning her over, but obviously that was part of the plan anyway, to go back in time and go after Cassie. Even at points, him manipulating Cole and everything, be like, oh yeah, the fact of the matter is you should go see Cassie. I mean, you don't know where she is right now, but like, at least in this time period, you know, it's like, dude, that's douchey, that's low. Which Cole was like, which later on Cole, you know, ended up figuring it out and stopping him and everything. But he's like, the fact of the matter is, I figured you out the moment you came back with Olivia. I knew something wasn't right, you know, because I should have figured it out too, because it's like, Olivia had like a whole group and everything. It's like, I mean, granted, a sign of peace and everything and willing to work together. It's like, okay, of course, like you wouldn't bring all your people because it would be suspicious, make you look like Deacon and his crew when they were working with the messengers and trying to take the place over again. Which we didn't get to meet the messenger again, the lady that's Olivia and the tall man's mom. Did we ever get to know his name? I mean, obviously he pops up throughout the season. I mean, granted, Olivia kills him in the end. So one wasn't expecting that. It makes you wonder, was she always going to do that anyway? I think she hated her brother. I mean, because obviously in season 2, like, her brother kind of got all high and mighty, thinking like he was special and everything, kind of took her place as like kind of almost not necessarily I don't know if the right hand to the witness would be the appropriate description, but at the very least, you know, it's just like he felt like he was a higher purpose, higher position. Because for Olivia, this whole season was about like, oh, like last season she lost her purpose and now she's trying to find it again. At least we thought she was, but it's like she always had her purpose in mind. Everything has been about. She's like, basically, they even ended up using a clip. She said, obviously, when everything's kind of being explained, there's a clip where she's like, why? What was it like? Pretend being a god when you why pretend to be something when you can't? Why pretend to be something when you can be it? Why not just be it yourself or something like that? And just like everything she did was just a calculated move. Obviously, the whole Ramsey and Sam situation. I mean, that makes that situation even sadder because it's like she tracked down Sam, got him just so she could use Ramsey as a means because she needed. Because this all trails back to the fact that there's a division amongst the 12 monkeys. There's the followers who are like, who believe wholeheartedly in the witness, and some are like, oh, I don't know, quite sure if I trust the witness and everything. And basically one of those dudes is the dude that helped Deacon and Cassie escaped, but then it's like, because he's like, oh yeah, the fact of the matter is, I want you to find the witness. It's like, oh, we thought you wanted us to find a witness so we can change him, which is kind of what Sebastian kind of wanted. But the fact of the matter is, this guy was like, no, I wanted to find the witness so we can have him killed. This whole thing was all about putting James and Cassie in a position to be trying to track down her son so that he can be wiped out and dealt with. This is all about her kind of stepping into that role and everything. But then sadly for Olivia, she finds out this entire time because she thought like, oh yeah, you failed your position, Ethan, as the witness, which she's like, I'm not the witness. The witness was always meant to be you, which is always like, it's trippy like that because like he spent so much time wondering like, oh, this is who I am. I'm going to grow up to become this monster. Everyone's tailoring me to be this monster. But lo and behold, I'm not the monster. At the end of the day, the monster is you, Olivia. You've been praying and everything, talking about you're praying to me. It's like technically you've been praying and worshiping yourself. The very farther in the future you who set all these plans in motion. This whole Red Forest plan is actually your plan to begin with. You kind of gave yourself as well as the other followers this whole situation. I should have figured as much because it's like she was born to be what she is. Like obviously having super strength and stuff like that. Like obviously she's no normal human. She's an experiment and everything. So maybe that's what the whole point. Maybe she was eventually because I forgot like the reasons why she was kind of created in the first place, like for obviously experimentation and stuff like that. But it's like, was it the future witness that sent that back in time? Like, oh yeah, I want you to make this girl. So it's like, was she making herself? Because the fact of the matter is, the way Athon put it, it's like, yeah, I had to make myself to ensure that I made you. Because me being the quote unquote witness would eventually lead to you to become the real witness. So. But what I was going to kind of really quickly bring up before was like, the fact is we didn't see too much of the messengers. And now that I'm sitting here thinking about the whole Olivia situation, obviously she wanted to find her own purpose. She wanted to kind of be more than what she is. Because, you know, it's something that kind of came up during the episode. There was like during the season, like there was a conversation between her and Jones about being almost envious of primaries and stuff like that, which is like, you know, she's like, wouldn't you be? You know, the fact of the matter is you get the roadmap to life kind of etched out in front of you, and that, I mean, you get to see the script laid out before you and everything, and you kind of have access to that amount of power. I mean, granted, it does come with the price of kind of driving you insane, which does beg the question, how did Athon just kind of deal with that? Like, obviously, he said, like, his cure was kind of traveling through time, but then again, I guess it's just, he was kind of, I don't know, like, because it seems like being a primary kind of strikes you at different points in your life, because it doesn't seem like Jennifer necessarily was one. We didn't meet her when she was younger, which I did like that conversation between young Jennifer and, you know, older Jennifer. Like, obviously it's her, the little girl, and then there's her dad in front of her. She's like, because he's like, oh yeah, I'll throw you into somewhere, you'll be locked up. But then she's kind of like, because for so long, she was afraid of her dad and everything. Remember, he locked her up. He didn't believe her. He just always kind of treated her like she was crazy. But this is the moment where she's like, nah, you try and lock me up, but the fact of the matter is I will come back stronger. You know where you'll be? You'll be dead. The fact of the matter is, and that death will be the kind of the new beginning for Jennifer, because her dad dying led to be essentially everything playing out for her to be where she is right now. Kind of helping with this whole situation. I even appreciate, like, I mean, her story is like, I mean, I love, like, Future Cole being like, yeah, the key to everything, it's Jennifer. Yeah, there is a lot behind those that crazy. Which we kind of got a little more explanation as to why she always refers to Cole as Otter Eyes. It's like, stop calling me that. She's like, you know why I call you that? Because people can lie all the time, but the one thing that can't lie are your eyes. And that's what convinced Cole not to kill his son. He looked in his son's eyes. But throughout that season, like, Jennifer's trying to help them and everything, even when there was divide between them and Jones, which there was even a whole conversation between Cole and Jones. I apologize, I'm bouncing all over the place. If you've never heard any, especially when it's full seasons like this, I go all over the place. That's why I kind of warned you from the beginning. I will always, like, I have a sense of, I think I have a slight case of ADD. Like, I'm always bouncing from one thing to another just because it's like I want to talk about everything, but like sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to forget something, or I'm just going to like just completely abandon any topics, which I'm pretty sure there's multiple times where I've like started something and then stopped it. I'm nevertheless moving on. But the conversation was basically like Jones and Cole talking about not having any choices. Like, she's like, you and Hannah never had a choice. You were born in your particular circumstances, and it made you the way you are. Your son, he has a choice not to be who he is and everything. And also even going as far as saying, like, there have been two great tragedies in her life. The moment she lost Hannah, and also being betrayed by a child. And it's like, that's so sweet, because it's like, that's what you think of Cole as, like, your son, don't you? Like, I was like, oh, like, obviously he's a friend and everything, which, like, she deeply cares about Cole. She always has. But it's like, to think, like, oh, you think of him like a son. That's so cute. She's even saying at one point, she's like, the fact of the matter is, why didn't you tell me? But Cole's like, would it really have, it would have made a difference if I told you? And the question is, would it have? I think things would have still went to the way they were. I mean, granted, the conversation would have been a lot different, because it's like, if he had told them ahead of time, it's like the group would have been divided, because there'll be some people like not all about killing a kid, because Dr. Adler had his own situation with a child. Then you have like Hannah and Joan's whole situation. So like, there were some sympathetic people. It does beg the question, would things have been any different? Maybe things might have even been worse. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you don't know with this particular situation. Also, I love this season that they kind of, like, Jennifer's always been crazy. She's been quite crazy in season 1. Crazier in season 2. They really kicked up the crazy in season 3, because there's even one of my favorite points. It's like at the beginning of the season when it's like she's there, like the Germans are coming by shooting soldiers in the head and everything, and Jennifer's I think she's trying to remember how to speak German and everything, and it kind of turns into a music video. It's like all bright. She's in a yellow dress, kind of like singing in German, I think, and you see the Germans kind of walking by. They're shooting, instead of people's heads, their bodies, but their heads are balloons this time. And it's like, and then like you cut to it, she's kind of like they're doing all this and that, and they're just standing there looking at her like, okay, what the hell? And then what was the other one? Right, her plan. When she came up with this whole plan about impersonating her mom and everything, and she's playing out different roles of everyone kind of talking. Like, even at one point, like, she's, like, you see it kind of flipping. It's her as Olivia being, like, explaining the whole plan and everything. And just the whole rundown of it is just so good. Like I said, they kicked it up. Like I said, to a fun extent, but also to a sad extent, with just the fact of the matter is just how much was going through her head. I did kind of appreciate that point in the season where it's like Deacon actually was a little more, obviously he tried to hide from his humanity and stuff like that. But seeing obviously Jennifer go to the extent that she was doing, like obviously she was hurting herself, bashing her head against the ground because she can't shut up the voices in her head and everything. Like even at one point it's like, yeah, you have no idea what it's like in here. And at one point he's like, yeah, maybe Jones, we should let her get some fresh air. It's just like, no, not in here, like as in the building, like in here as in my mind and everything. So she ended up helping save Athon, and how he ended up bringing up, like, it seems that Jennifer is the key to everything. All the pieces are there, but she just can't quite focus it. But Athon kind of goes like, hey, all the clues are here. The fact of the matter is she ends up drawing that giant serpent. Once again, that popped up in something else recently. What was it? I think it's the originals that's popping up. Like, I think that's referred to Ouroboros. Like, isn't that, like, I could be getting stuff wrong. I think I brought this up in the originals, and I still haven't checked to make sure if it was right, but I could have sworn that's connected to it. Like, because isn't this all connected to Jormungand? And do correct me, but isn't Jormungand connected to Norse mythology? It's the snake that wraps around the entire world. It eats its tail. Maybe it's a completely different thing, but basically this is a serpent that basically it always moves one way, forward, never backwards. But the symbol was that, like, obviously all these drawings laid about, and it's like, it's that, plus in the inside, obviously you see the monkey, like, face, kind of the representation of the 12 monkeys, so it's like, what does that mean? And then there's this whole story at the end where it's like James and his dad, like back in 2015, obviously a young Cole, and his dad tells him this story of how the serpent always moves forward until the day it crosses path with a demon. What that means, I don't know. We did see that something goes up with Olivia's face, that her face is kind of reddish in the future. So it's like something went wrong. Maybe the experiment that kind of worked on her, like whatever it is that makes her different, maybe that activated and kind of transitioned something into her. I don't know. Maybe she's becoming the demon, or she's supposed to represent the serpent that's always going for. I don't know. I mean, with it all said and done, their son is technically dead. Going forward, I mean, he was killed by Olivia, basically, and like, at the end of the day, you will lose Olivia because you have no one. Because she doesn't have anyone. Because, even when she was growing up, she didn't really have anyone. All she had was her faith and her belief in the, oh, that was just you. So that means at the end of the day, you have nothing. That's not, you just killed your brother, which is not like you and your brother were that tight to begin with. You don't have your mom. There's no one you got close to, because anyone you got close to, you ended up betraying or using. So it's like, at the end of the day, you got these followers and everything, but that still doesn't fill that void in your heart. Like, you're still kind of, in a way, that lonely little girl that we met, you know, in that cage back in season 2, you know, still on escape. Even when you think that you've escaped from the cells that kind of, or the prisons that bind you, you just end up finding out that you're still locked in a cell, still that little girl locked in a box and everything, you know? So it's quite sad, but then at the same time, it's like, almost like, who cares? Screw you, all the bad things you've done, all the bad things you will do going forward. So, because obviously this is all going, like, obviously everything's going to be trailing back to explain how everything is. Because I'm pretty sure that's one thing I've kind of said before. It's like, my thought was, I always thought that the body might have been Cole's body, the body that Leland ends up pulling the virus from in the first place. I don't know if that's the case or not. I mean, obviously we'll be diving deeper into it. Like I said, like, the show has been renewed for a 4th season. I'm pretty sure it was actually, like, even obviously before even the 3rd season had aired, they had already announced that. I guess it's because they knew they were going to do this season like this nonetheless, so that's why. But the next season will be the last season. I'm very interested to see where everyone stands. Like, I mean, obviously they're going to be united and everything from the preview, kind of spoilers and everything, but kind of, I mean, in retrospect, it probably won't matter, because, like, I'll probably forget, because obviously this is that'll be popping up 2018, so it won't be until, like, almost like not almost, it will be a year from now, so I'll most likely forget by then. But obviously saw Ramsey, so it's like, does that mean Ramsey's come back? Because he made Cole promise me, it's like, do not come back in time and try to fix this, because I guess it's like him and Sam are dead, so it's like maybe somewhere in the afterlife they're there, or maybe it's like Ramsey doesn't want the whole situation of, like, whole trying to fix everything type of, I don't know. So either he goes back and saves Ramsey, or maybe that's a different point in time. He goes back in time and meets with Ramsey, talks to him, which Ramsey might, maybe he tells Ramsey ahead of time. It's like, yo, I'm me from the future. Or maybe it's like, oh, you're, maybe that's why Ramsey told him not to do it, because it's like, maybe before he got there, he ran into a different Cole that's like, hey, I'm from the future, let's talk. Or maybe, like I said, the point I was trying to make is like, oh, maybe it's Ramsey from some point in the past that Cole from the future goes back in time. I don't know. I mean, because when it's all said and done, like, when everything is fixed and everything, what does that mean for Cole? What does that mean for Cassie? What does that mean for everyone? All these relationships built will basically be undone. What does this mean for Athon? Would he never be born, or will he be born, but obviously under different circumstances? Obviously, you saw in the preview too. Let's not forget about how things end for Cassie. And then we have this whole thought process of, like, oh, the way things will, like, you know, you take Eliza, like, she died, because it wasn't just, like, you know, she died. She would die on the same day she was always meant to die. So, obviously, back in season 1, we found out about Cassie, the day that Cassie died. So, does that mean the same thing applies for her? Even because they even played that clip during, like, there was like, oh, for season 3 and everything. So, it's, I mean, for season 4, so that's going to be something that's probably Cole's going to have to deal with, you know. You know, is there such thing as eventualities? Is everything kind of, has everything already played out and we're just kind of playing along in these loops, or is there any way to break them? Questions that maybe we'll get answers in the next season, you know. I brought it up earlier. I'm very curious, will those Splinter suits, I wonder will they come back? Obviously, we know that Cole has one later on, because we still haven't circled back to him at the beginning of the season yet, so. But I'm wondering, is everyone have one? Like, does the Witness arm all the 12 monkeys with them, or did, like, only, like, the privileged, like, the top rank and most loyal amongst the 12 monkeys get to do it? Or is it stuff Olivia does herself? Questions like that, and I'm very curious to kind of get answers to. Oh yeah, and almost, like, completely forgot about, I was actually not going to even include this. I completely forgot about, let's not forget about Cassie's situation with her mom. We kind of learned more about her mom's situation. I don't remember if that came up or not. It probably did. Terrible memory, non-rewatching stuff. I watched the thing is, I think my excuse, I can honestly say, is just I watch so much TV that stuff starts bleeding together, and I don't, you know, stuff in my brain gets replaced from other stuff in my brain. Like, other TV shows kind of get replaced, so that's why I forget a lot of stuff. So, from season to season and stuff like that, especially after such a long time, being like a year, a little more over a year, because I think last year it started around April, didn't it? I could be remembering that wrong, but nevertheless, but the fact is that Cassie brought up how her mom died. Her mom had like a brain aneurysm. Basically, her mom was already sick, and basically one day she asked Cassie to go to the museum with her, but Cassie wouldn't do it. Just kind of, I guess, just caught up with everything. Just didn't want to, it's just one of those situations where it's like your parents are like, oh, let's go somewhere. It's like, oh, no. And her mom ended up dying. The last thing her mom wanted to do was go to the museum with her and then bond everything. And that was a regret that Cassie always had. She ended up going back in time and talking with her mom, trying to understand, Ethan a little bit more, kind of explain it's like, oh yeah, this is him. And obviously learning that he's not just some psychopath. He's just a sad, lonely, broken individual. Kind of understanding her son a little bit more. I was wondering if Cassie would ever tell her mom the truth or whatever. The reason why I said him was because immediately while I was saying that, I was thinking about Gil's whole situation. They ended up bumping into him obviously they ended up telling him later on, they wanted to keep it secret from him how he dies and everything, but obviously they end up telling him, and he's like, oh, but did my death mean something? Did I help change things? Dying in 61, which are like, honestly, we don't know. But, even had the tall man handing him a page at at that last moment, and it's like, oh yeah, so it makes you wonder, will there be any changes to his life? I mean, I guess we'll get to the film. I wonder will we get to, because Cole even brought it up himself. He's like, the fact of the matter is you're going to help us in 61, aren't you? Even though I'm telling you not to, just to stay as far away from this whole situation. And it's like, I don't know. We'll just have to wait till 61 comes around. I don't know if we'll be going back to Gale's storyline or not. Maybe it'll be a situation where it's like, maybe we might dive a little further before then, or maybe there might be some stuff afterwards. Maybe it's like you thought he was dead, but he wasn't. I doubt that. He probably really is, because he did catch a bunch of bullets. Not unless they went back in time and gave him a bulletproof vest and make it look like he died, just so they think he died, and just the whole continuation and stuff. I don't know. But the point I was talking about was obviously she got to spend time with her mom and everything. I was kind of halfway expecting her to tell her mom the truth, but obviously she was like, oh yeah, I'm your daughter, but she's older and everything. But it's like, no, she never told her that. She's like, but do one thing for me, just force her to go to the museum, even if she goes kicking and screaming. Force her to do that. Go to the museum with you, just so that won't be a regret. So, speaking of parents, I did almost forget that, the person that story, those words that Cole's dad was reading to him about the snake going forward, and then the demon that finally stops it or whatever, it was his mom that wrote that. So obviously seeming like that might be a destination we cross paths with, because Cole doesn't really know that much about his mom. It seems like this would be the best circumstance to learn more about her. Like I said, I get this feeling like next season is going to be the season of let's dive deeper into everyone's situations. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of interesting. I don't remember if he popped up at all. Obviously he was a big part of season 1, but I don't think Jennifer's dad, Leland, popped up. Did he pop up at all last season? Because now I'm thinking about it, man, he only popped up once. I mean, granted, he has his part to play in all this, but he's not as... I mean, obviously there's connections and ties back to everything, but I don't think he's as deeply rooted into this as, other people are. There's a lot more people deeply rooted in all this situation. It's going to be interesting to find out, how everything plays out, what events lead to what, because obviously before the 4th season airs, I'm going to try and binge on all 3 seasons, and so that way I can go into it with a lot more clarity of oh, so that's what this was about. This led to this, and this thing from later season ended up reflecting this thing from earlier season. Sorry, I'm at this point. I'm just rambling. I do apologize about that. So. I'm also very curious to see, will Sci-Fi do the same thing that they did with season 3? Will they do that with season 4, or will they kind of go back to the week-to-week format? I mean, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. I'm very excited to see what they do with 4th season. Like I said, a very, very good season. Very good twists and turns that I wasn't quite expecting. Well, I mean, I kind of should have known, because it's time travel and everything. Time travel is always going to get you with those stingers, so... But yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about. I'm sure there's a lot more, but for right now, nothing else is coming to my mind. I always leave comments down below. We can always have a conversation about everything that's happened this season. Obviously, this is a spoiler thing, so it's go nuts. If anyone happens to come across the spoilers in the comments down below, that's, sorry, but I mean, go ahead and let you know ahead of time. Like, do not read the comments. Like, you know, if you don't want to be spoiled and stuff like that. I should have probably put that disclaimer at the beginning of this whole recording, but nevertheless, putting at the tail end of it is kind of fine too. I'm an idiot. But till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.